Peace. Abaragani, Islam, Salam, Etepu, Rahubat, Gino Lakoninani, Chief Noble Bandele, El Amin, back in the building. And today I got my boy, my homeboy. We go back. Once again, we got him on the show. A special guest, Amin Maat Ra in the building. All right.
Peace and blessings to the family.
Yes. And so today, we decided we're going to talk about the sacred geometry of the indigenous mound builders. So you guys are going to be like, well, what does that all entail? There's a lot that's going to be entailed with that. So we're going to get into that. So before we jump into that, please smash the like button when y'all come in. All right. Please smash the like button. Please share this video to as many people as you know. Okay. And please subscribe to the channel. So with that being said, I'm going to hit you with an ad and then we're going to come back.
Oh, if they just let me see, or it just on me, it's showing me the light. Folks, they set us free, knowledge is the key, guiding me all right, and that feel right.
Yes. All right, and y'all, we got an array of different books. We got Amin Maat Ra books on Indigenous Moors.org. We got my books. Amin Maat Ra books. We got King El Bey. We also got Brother Abdullah Bey's books and many more. So please, go check us out on Indigenous Moors.org. And you can also check out some of our books on Amazon as well. So, well, with that being said, we about to get into this. We about to get into this science, right? I know a lot of people are familiar with mounds. I live in Ohio. Me and brother Amin Maat Ra live in Ohio, and they are very dominant in Ohio. They're very dominant in the Midwest, but I've seen the mounds myself. I've been to some mounds. All right, I've been to Serpent Mound. There's a mound up in Centerville that I went to a few years ago. There are mounds all around, and there's probably mounds that they don't even talk about, right? But there's so many of them, and we really don't understand them. They're kind of mysterious. There's not been a lot of history done on American, prehistoric or American history due to colonialization, right? But what I want to do is I'm going to talk about a little bit about the mounds, and I know Amin Maat Ra is going to get into the mounds too, right? But he's going to hit you with a twist on it, right? So I'm not even going to I'm going to let you guys get to that point, and y'all going to feel what he's got to do, right? But we're going to like hit the 1-2 punch with this one, right? He wanted me to talk a little bit about the mounds, the sacred mounds in the United States, which is the more popular mounds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss it I'm going to discuss a little bit of it just to get you guys warmed up, all right? So one of the things that I did was I wanted to just put a little presentation together, because we're talking about sacred geometry, right? And I want you to first understand that sacred geometry is a universal mathematics. It's something that you're going to find in all the civilizations around the world. There's going to be some form of sacred geometry. So it's not, one group of people had them. These concepts are found around the world. So looking at sacred geometry, we talk about sacred geometry, and it's saying that sacred geometry is a fascinating concept, and it ties together mathematics, nature, and spirituality. So it's the idea that certain geometric shapes and proportions are inherently significant and carry profound meaning. One of the most intriguing applications of sacred geometry is found in the mounds, the ancient mounds of America. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys some pictures as well, but just to give you a quick brief thing on this. So it's saying that the mounds in America, built by various indigenous cultures, are earthen structures that serve as evidence of sophisticated engineering and deep spiritual significance. These mounds are scattered across the United States, with notable examples including Cahokia Mounds in Illinois and Serpent Mounds in Ohio, which I've been to. And then you've even got the ones that are in Louisiana, the Poverty Point, which a lot of people might have heard about when you talk about Ouachita, right? So it's saying that in the Cahokia, the largest prehistoric earthen construction in the Americas, north of Mexico. And now I ain't even gonna get into Mexico, but I got an honorable mention. When we talk about Mexico, you know, we got a lot of pyramidal structures in Mexico as well. But this is north of Mexico. So the mounds are arranged in a way that aligns with celestial events. The monk's mound, the centerpiece, is a massive four-terraced structure that stands about 100 feet high. Surrounding it are various flat-top mounds that form a complex that suggests understanding the solar and lunar cycles. The alignment of these mounds with solstice and equinoxes indicate that the builders had a sophisticated knowledge of astrology, which is a key aspect of sacred geometry. Now, I'm like I said, I'm not gonna get into what my brother gonna speak on, but when I think of that, and if you envision that paragraph, it sounds like a step pyramid. Okay, it sounds like a step pyramid. So, you know, I just want to put that on your mind. So it says that the Serpent Mounds in Ohio is another prime example. This effigy mound, shaped like a serpent, stretches nearly a quarter mile in length. Its design incorporates precise alignment with astrological phenomena, such as summer solstice, sunset, and lunar phases. The serpent itself, a powerful symbol in many cultures, adds a layer of mythical significance to the geometric precision of the mound. Okay. Then we got Poverty Point. That's in Louisiana. It's another site that has sacred geometry and is very evident. And this ancient complex includes a series of concentric earthen ridges and mounds that form a semi-elliptical shape. The layout of Poverty Point suggests that the builders had an advanced understanding of geometry and engineering. And this site is designed also, and it also hints at its use for ceremonial and trade center, demonstrating how sacred geometry can be intertwined with both spiritual and practical aspects of life. So these mounds are more than just archaeological curiosities. They reflect the deep connection that ancient cultures had with the earth and the sky and the cosmos. They remind us of the sacred geometry is not just an abstract concept, but is practical and a spiritual tool that ancient people used to align themselves with rhythms of the universe. Okay, so I'm gonna show you real quick just what we was talking about. Okay, so if you look at some of this right here, out of this book, right, you see how this right here, the United States, it's showing. Now, let me see, Ohio. It ain't really showing Ohio in here, like dark, but
it's hard to see right there.
Ohio got a lot of mounds. I'm gonna show you. right? But it's got a lot of mounds. So what I'm gonna do though, okay, let me go back one more. Okay, so what I'm gonna show is just a couple. So these are some of the mounds. Like when they were talking about some of the mounds that have uh, one on top of each other. This right here is the Cahokian mound. So if you look at that, it's like kind of like it's got steps to it, right? It's got a one, two, right? You got this one as well. Let's see if I could. This one as well, showing you that these are structures. These are not just circumstance, but and if you can see that like blue car right there, that look like my car for real. But if you see that car right there, you see how small that car is compared to this mound. This mound is huge, right? It's saying that. Let me go back. Let me go back. Okay. It's saying the height currency of this vicinity is 100 feet. The largest mound and the only mound with more than 2 terraces. All maps and reconstruction of this mound illustrate 4 terraces or levels. So this is what we were talking about. The first terrace is the lowest and the fourth being the highest. Okay, so now look at this. So they're showing you what this used to look like. Now see, to me, this looked like if we didn't know no better, this looked right here like ancient like African Kemetic or like ziggurats or some Babylonian or ancient Kemetic Nile Valley type structures. You know what I mean? So these structures are said to be able to align with the stars or align, showing you certain equinoxes. So I'm gonna show you that too, right? I'm gonna show you that real quick. I'm gonna show you what they mean. This is another just showing you that look how it's set up. You see the preciseness of this, right?
That's a good diagram.
Like this diagram is really, showing it. So if we look at this one right here, you see this structure. It's saying the celestial orientation for the monk's mound. We talked about the monk's mound. You see, it's got the equinox sunset. It's got the equinox sunrise. It's got winter sunset. It's got the solstice summer sunrise. So all these figures are showing us summer solstice sunset, summer solstice sunrise, winter solstice sunrise, winter solstice sunset. You see what I'm saying? So it's got the way they set these things up were to. Well, I'm not gonna make that assumption, but based on what I'm seeing, they were able to use it to keep track of time and keep track of celestial movement in the sky. Okay, so that's part of that sacred geometry that we're talking about. They weren't just burial mounds per se; they had some other much more use of these things, right? So let me see. There was one more. You can see that. You can see that. You see how these structures really look. There's one more. Okay. So this one right here also shows some of the same thing. The way they had it set up, it reminds me of, even when we look at Stonehenge.
I was just about to say that.
Right. So like some of these structures are set up very similar to what was going on in other parts of the world. And they also were set up to keep track of, like we said, time, or, basically to know when this, it was very important to understand the equinox and the solstices and when was the longest day, when was the shortest day, and these things of that nature. So, I mean, even probably with eclipses and things like that, you're going to find that they also understood as well. So these were very advanced structures, very, very advanced structures, man. So, I just wanted to show you guys a little bit about what we got going on. Let me see who's in the building, y'all. So that's really the gist of what I was going to say. I just wanted, I had to mention. We had to mention the
Oh,
the
no
structure,
doubt.
you know, but there's there's definitely a connection between here and in Africa and other parts of the world too. So I mean, I really think there's a connection, even if it's not like there's some geometrical connections to these people in the world. Everybody had an understanding of celestial occurrences, it seems. So so that's basically my presentation on that, brother. I wasn't gonna be too long.
Excellent.
I just want to set you up to get the nitty gritty. So we about to really get into some some real good in-depth stuff right here, my brother. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and take over, and you can drop these jewels on them. And you can always hit the present when you're ready to do your thing.
All righty. It's perfect foundation you laid. So now, with that being said, we have the groundwork for sacred geometry and how it ties nature and spirituality. So first, I have to, navigate through a few things. The first being how language orientation can take us away from not noticing other amazing mound structures and the psychology and the spiritual outlook, the religious philosophy of our classical mound builders as we step outside of the Americas. Now, in order to do that, we have to change the language orientation from newer interpretations and step back to older interpretations. And with that being said, let me get ready to set up our presentation. So, the first thing when we think about the term Kemet, if we look here, can we see it? Am I sharing good?
Yep, I got you.
You see the screen, everything's good? So,
yes, sir.
When we look at the place name Kemet, the first hieroglyphic letter of the word Kemet is the I6 glyph, which is a phonetic value of Kim. So that's where you get the sound from. When you look at this glyph right here before the owl, that's where you get the phonetic Kim sound from. So there's some technical issues concerning what the glyph actually represents. Now, there have been many proposals for what the I-16 glyph is, but none have been satisfactory to many scholars and linguists. Some have argued that the I6 glyph is a crocodile tail, crocodile scales. Most Egyptologists are of this opinion. The third being it represents a piece of burning charcoal, such as the late Senegalese scholar Sheikh Anta Diop. That's where you get some that argue that Kim means black land or black soil. Number four, some interpret it as a creature's claw. Now, the African linguist Mubabinge Balolo, an amazing linguist, and he proposed this in his texts and research. Now, his basis for that, it should be noted, I found the glyph work and everything, is that Kemet, when it's spelled like this, as you see in Sesh Medu Necher. Now, when we say Medu Necher, we mean the written language of Kemet. When you say Sesh Medu Necher, that's the fuller term. Sesh means written, or that's also another term for a scribe. So it means dorsal fin, or a reference to the Necher Sebek, which is the crocodile deity. So when we go into the research by the formerly known as the Amin Rasquat, part of the greater research family that I'm a part of, I always like to give sources for various forms of the information that I'm about to speak about. So you can hear this from multiple sources that cover various angles about what I'm going to go into before we get into the theme of mounds. So a good text to have is a contribution to the debate of the meaning of the place name Kemet by the Shemsu Haru research team. And they presented linguistic data and sources for the inspiration of this particular glyph. Now, despite the previous ideas that we presented for what the glyph means, based on all the evidence that we found and researched through older primary sources, what we're actually looking at in the I6 Kim glyph that forms Kemet is a stylized representation of a riverbank, but it's from an aspective view looking down from above. And it's strange because the level of detail it's almost as if somebody was in a helicopter looking down with the type of precision. So the part of the glyph that's perceived as a hill from the perspective is in fact the curvature of the African Nile Valley river's edge when you look down from an aerial view. So the Melanated term Ra, which is another, not Ra the deity, but when Ra is spelled like this, it means water's edge. So the I6 glyph, it actually depicts one side of the Nile River, most likely at the edge of the Delta marshes. Now, this is the region where the cattle were grazed, and you had a lot of agricultural stuff going on in here. Now, the author, as another source, before I take flight here, the author Toby Wilkinson in this text, Early Dynastic Egypt, and this is a 2001 text, he informs us that the Delta seems to have been closely associated with the cattle raising. So he gets into this particular region that the actual glyph represents. Now, when we compare the actual glyph, the first glyph that spells Kemet, if you look at here, I'm comparing it directly to the river's edge of the African Nile Valley in direct comparison to Kemet. So here along the Nile Valley, if we look at the first actual glyph that spells Kemet, we can see that it's actually almost an exact representation of the jagged contour of the African Nile riverbank, as this image of the left, compared to the I6 hieroglyph that's used to spell the place name Kemet. So now we're starting to see how the glyphs, when we deal with Melanated or the hieroglyphic script, we're showing how not only do the glyphs speak a traditional language, they also give you extra vital information, geographical information, topographical information. There's so many rich layers of information that can be shared through these glyphs. So as I said, before we do with one, we have to deal with this particular interpretation of the glyph before we go to the next. So the projectiles are actually that you see on this glyph spelling Kemet. When you see these jagged edges, just how you see the water, the jagged edges meet the shoreline, they're actually rhizomes or plant buds associated with the marsh reeds and vegetation in general. They're also important plants found along the Nile's river's edge, which are tall perennial grasses and things of this nature. So when we look at the Melanated term Isu, it means reeds, rushes, papyrus stalks, plants, and we also have the term Suet, which means cyperus reed, and that is one of your. So when we go here to this image where all of these cyperus reeds, this right here is where one of your emblems for kingship, the cyperus reed, grows right along here, and they pull those, and they often use those in art and in different motifs as symbols of kingship, and that's in Upper Kemet. So now these same plants, they're like bamboo and everything. They can be used to construct things. They can make arrow shafts, medical instruments, all types of things that's in this nature or whatever. When we're looking at that glyph. So another thing to note is that these same reed rushes, papyrus stalks present along the African Nile River may also be used as food. So now you're also talking about a food source. So when we want to talk about the diet of Kemet and people that lived along the African Nile Valley, because this is pretty much a consistent diet along, if you're going to forage from along these particular areas. So these young reed roots and everything, you can eat them raw, or you can cook them like potatoes. They're often dried and ground for like an ancient form of porridge, and you can make cereal. That's why there are dictionary entries for the word Kim, such as Kimu, which means seeds, fruit, or Kim plant, or Kimiyu, which means food. In addition, the word Kemet does not just mean ancient Egypt. We also have the term Kemet, which also means grain and plant. So that's what we're building on. This is a more newer interpretation when we look at Kemet as a place name. So it gives you plenty of concepts. So now that is the newer interpretation of how we get to Kemet. However, when we look at the I6 glyph, this particular version of the glyph, it's just the shrubs on a curved edge. Now, when we go to direct contrast for an older and more fuller definition of this particular glyph and in how it relates to the North African nation of Kemet, we find that the Old Kingdom written forms of the glyph and the plant shrubs, they can be found across an entire mound. So when we get to the actual Old Kingdom depiction of the Kim hieroglyph, it is actually rendered like this, and it's cataloged as the I6A glyph. So it's the I6 with the addition of the letter A. Now, as a great source, I always like to share some of our women researchers in the field of Egyptology, because a lot of times I don't think they're given their proper just due. So when we look at a great female Egyptological scholar, Alexandra Nibby, she wrote a text, a further note on the Kim hieroglyph. And this is just so you can show other sources along with what I'm saying. She makes the same argument too, that the I6A glyph is in fact a whole mound with vegetation growing from it, which was later represented by a half mound of the Nile soil. So the reason we don't think about mounds outside of the Americas, or in particular the African Nile Valley, is because the definition of Kemet, when we think of it and how the glyphs are interpreted, we think of it from a newer interpretation based on the layout of the shoreline. However, the whole mound glyph, it looks just like this, as we can see. And then you have the X1 glyph, which some say is a loaf of bread. However, let me go through these different interpretations of the glyph so you can see the evolution. So the whole mound looks just like the X1, the T. So given its many representations as a base for vegetation, we may need to strongly reconsider defining these glyphs. So here you're seeing how, again, the traditional way of spelling Kemet with this particular glyph. Here we see the Old Kingdom depiction top right here with the I6A, and we see how this evolved in various different glyphs. And these are the more common representations if you want to look them up to see how they grew. So it's clear that the Old Kingdom I6A glyph is an entirely different glyph than the I6 glyph, which is traditionally used to spell Kemet. The changing, and this is important to know before I jump knee deep into this, the changing and updating of hieroglyphs is a very common practice throughout the history of North African Kemet. I have to repeat this again. The changing and updating of hieroglyphs was a very common practice throughout the history of North African Kemet. Thus, the focus of the Old Kingdom version of the I6A hieroglyph was plants on a mound. Now, during the Middle Kingdom of Kemet, the focus was artistically placed on the plants present along the river's edge because of the importance. You could make food, you could make medical instruments. There was a lot of layered value. But the original glyph used to spell Kemet was indeed an entire mound. Now, evidence for this interpretation can be seen in later renditions. So now let's get into what we came here for with the sacred geometry. Brother Ban did a great job of dealing with the sacred, and in explaining the spiritual aspects, he also told us that they bound not only just the spiritual but nature. So let's talk about the nature aspects too, along with the spiritual. So I've noticed that in the community, we have only seen a handful of ways to spell Kemet, which is the way I've just seen. However, here is one of the older terms for Kemet. And we must remember the term Kemet is fairly new. You don't get the term Kemet as a toponym for North Africa, or what we call Egypt, till roughly the 10th or 11th dynasty. We'll dovetail back on that in a minute. But I wanted to show you this ancient terms. This is one of the old place names for Kemet in the Old Kingdom. One of the reference, Iowet, the mounds. The Melanated term Wabet means mound, high-lying agricultural land. And the plural noun Kwa means ancient mounds, earth mounds. So there was a distinction. They knew our ancestors, when we go into the actual mound builders, and now we're going to start building on the mound builders of the African Nile Valley in the fullest form. So our ancestors in the African Nile Valley, centuries before what was created in Americas, we understood the various qualities of the different mounds, as our brother Ben just illustrated to us, with the various levels for ceremonies, religious practice, things of this nature and everything. So in ancient times, Kemet was known for the great number of mounds composed of earth, gravel, rocks, and other ritual materials it possessed. The Melanated term Ayat means mountain or ruin. There are so many mounds that at one point in history, the Black African country of Kemet was named Awat, the mounds. So long before Kemet was known as Kemet, this was known essentially as the land of the mounds. The place name Awat is spelled with the N30 mound of earth with shrubs glyph. So even when you look, let me go back and show you this, because I haven't seen this presented to the community, showing these ancient spellings of what our ancestors were doing before Kemet was named Kemet. So I wanted to show how this mound glyph in comparison to a mound as we see here. Now you'll find these definitions, the older, fuller definitions of Kemet represented as a land of mounds in your German references. So this would be from your Waterburst dictionary or whatever, which is your German Egyptological databases. So again, there were so many mounds built throughout the African Nile Valley, in particular Kemet, that they had no choice but to name this particular region Awat the mounds. So the place name Awat, again, is spelled with this shrub glyph and mounds. Now, remember how it said the term mounds could mean mounds or ruins. First, we're going to deal briefly with the ruins. As Brother Ben said, and here in Americas, especially Ohio, we have many amazing step mounds, step pyramids. So here we see the step pyramid ruins in Saqqara necropolis. And these are the tombs of the early Nasut Bidi. Now, Nasut Bidi is the actual term in Kemet that they use for king. So here in Kemet, these were the bench-shaped mounds that we call mastabas. So throughout history, indigenous melanated Africans have created artificial mounds for many purposes, including burials for beloved deceased, platforms for sacred temples to be erected on, the residence of a chief, because a lot of times your chiefs would reside on special mounds, especially in the African Nile Valley. You had religious ceremonies, important social activities, historical landmarks, a symbol of an ethnic group's celebrated heritage, and to establish claim and jurisdiction over a territory. When a meta-nature term Awat is spelled like this, it means, if you can see that spelling, it means mound, ruins, the physical destruction or breakdown of a building or a place to the state of disintegrate. Here, I wanted to show more glyphs of the various terms. Here we have Iadet Wedge, the mound of Udi. We'll just keep it like this. This is a recording in Medu-Neter of another major mound site in Kemet, which is referred to by Egyptologists as the mound of Udi. There are numerous types of mounds in Kemet, including burial mounds, mastaba bench-shaped mounds, and spring mounds created by cold spring water that rises naturally and deposits earth, sand, and gravel as it travels the earth. Unlike the famous Remetu, which is the term that the ancient Egyptians called themselves, unlike the ancient Remetu pyramids, which are called Meru in Kemet, the Meru were built from massive blocks of flawlessly cut stones. The ancient mounds of Kemet, however, and throughout the African Nile Valley, they were constructed almost entirely of layers of transported soil and clay. So it's important to note that when you conduct quality research on this topic, this is a major reason why when you try to research mounds in Africa, if you use just this term in your search, it won't be as fruitful, because mounds are oftentimes referred to as hills, sacred hills, and mounds. As an example, we have this Medu-Neter term Baal, which means hills and mounds. So this term right here could mean a hill or a mound. So when we look at the geological survey, there is no real official difference between hills and mountains. Now, this is according to the official U.S. Geological Survey that they came.
Wow.
So to briefly elaborate, now we're gonna bear with me now. Hopefully, in this I can piggyback on this entry to West Africa. Now that we're on Kemet, I'm gonna mention this entry, and then we're gonna tie in. We're gonna show some continuity here. So to briefly elaborate on how mounds, hills, and mounds are all viewed as being sacred organic sites in different African spiritual systems, it's important to bring our focus of attention to Oke, who is the Orisha deity or force of nature of mountains, hills, and mounds. Oke is a general name for any Orisha or force of nature. Now, this is coming from your West African Ifa tradition. Now, the actual Ifa is the name of the oracle that the Yoruba use, but the actual tradition and the lifestyle of dedicating your life to the Orisha and trying to embody the Orisha, The actual lifestyle and religion is called Isheshe. That's not written in here. I just wanted to put that as a note. So the Yoruba word "oke," now where that Orisa's name come from, it actually means hill, mound, or a mountain. In addition, it is also a prefix of a name given to venerators of the Orisha of mountains, hills, and mounds, a shortening such of a name such as Okatayo. Now these are mound venerators in the Yoruba tradition. So among the Yoruba and all throughout West Africa, you do have initiations where the initiation sites are ancient hills, mounds, and mountains from old times. Now, Oke Ora is an ancient West African Yoruba community and archaeological site situated on a hill. It's about 5 miles, Ile Ife. Now, Ile Ife, these mounds of Ile Ife is the foundation. This is the spiritual birthplace of the Yoruba people. So when you talk about the Yoruba tradition, Ile Ife is an extremely important location. So in between the city and small village of Itagamande, Oke Ora is the most important landmark in a chain of 7 hills surrounding the sites of the ancient Ife Confederation. Now here's the Ife Ill again. Mounds, hills, and mountains are the same in Kemet and West Africa. And as we get through this, we're going to see why they view it the same. Now, here's the sacred Ora Hill, Oke Ora. Now, this is in Osun State in Nigeria. And this came from 13 families and everything coming together.
So they built that?
Yes. This is a natural foundation formation. And then you have smaller mounds within that the hill that were created.
Okay.
That became traditional sites on that landmark right there. So let's see. Now, several important stories and legends of the Yoruba people surround this site. In the Yoruba creation legend, it was the first. Now check this out. According to the Yoruba, this was the first mound of earth formed from the soil of a snail and from which Ife, the first settlement, was built. So this is also a place where Oduduwa, one of the major founding Orisha in the mythos of the founding of the nation of Ife and everything. So Oke Ora continues to play an important role in certain religious rites of the Ife people today, most significantly in the coronation rituals of the Oni, which is the king. So even amongst the king, we see references to rituals that pay homage to the importance of and symbolism of the mound. Now, because of its organic construction style and its flattened top, over the years, countless mounds in Kemet and throughout Africa have retained rainwater. And this has caused a total collapse and slumping and avalanche-like sliding of large sections and everything. So it's often hard to find. Now, however, we only have to turn to the English journalist, world traveler, and Egyptologist, and I want to share another female researcher. Her name is Amelia Ann Blandford. Her comments in her text, Pharaohs, Fallahs, and Explorers. Now, in Arabic, Fallahs, as we know, is basically a peasant or a farmer or agriculturalist. It's kind of the mixture of those three in Arabic, the way it plays out in their society. So, and this is in the 1800s. So I like to show newer sources and older sources to prove some of the points that I'm trying to stand on. So now in 1800s, she said, she gave a great description of the African Nile Delta as it was little more than 100 years ago. So in 1882, this is only just a blink of an eye. So she co-founded the Egypt Exploration Fund to examine and excavate the areas of Egypt and the Sudan. She
breaking up. Hey Mo, you kind of breaking up. Your signal is messed up real quick. You might have to come back in. Your, hey brother, your signal is, you got a bad connection. Can you hear me? I think we lost him. I'm gonna have him come back. There we go. I'm gonna have him come back in. But so I kind of want to go over this. So we talk about mounds, and most of us think about mound builders. We think about Americas. We're a lot of times we've been talking like, we've been in America first. The mounds were here, but we don't talk about the mounds in Africa. And what's interesting about it is when me and the brother was talking like about this 2 weeks ago, we were going to do a show on this. I got to doing my research. I got to looking it up. If you guys go and do a Google search on mounds in Africa, you won't find anything on that. Like you won't find anything. Every time you put mounds in Africa, it's going to give you research about mounds in America. So I was like, and so I'm like, well, how is brother going to do this show? Because I'm like, I can't find anything on mounds in Africa, and I'm looking, but my mind is telling me that there's got to be mounds in Africa, right? I mean, why wouldn't there be mounds? But the way that they are constructed in language, they don't connect to mounds. They don't structure them as mounds. And so what I'm seeing in his what he's showing me in this presentation is that mounds in ancient times, like he's showing in ancient Kemet, the term Kemet meant mound. Okay, so if you guys are just coming in, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, right? But you might have missed this. What the brother was saying, and what he's saying is that the term mound is used in the language in Kemet. They were saying that Kemet was known as the land of the mounds, and that these mounds were constructed. These weren't all natural formation. These mounds were constructed. So I'm like, and so when we get to look at it, like if we go back and look, I'm gonna add, if you go back and look at what I had up here, right? Like if you look at this picture right here, like these structures are in America. Now, why these structures look very similar to what you'll find in Egypt? Okay, like when you look at this structure looks like it could be in ancient Kemet or Babylon or whatever. Like when we think about these structures, we tend to look at these structures as separate from each other. So when we think about Africa, we think about pyramids. We think about those. We think about structures. But when we look at the figures in America, we call them mounds. And in modern time, when we talk about mounds, it seemed like they use the term mound to type of. It's kind of like it degrade what that structure really was about, because a mound sounds very unarchitectural, if that's a word. You know what I mean? Like when you think of a mound, you just think of grass, dirt, and like a lump on the ground, right? But these are very integral, like very exquisite, advanced structures that have been created out of dirt. Some of this dirt, like he was saying in Kemet, a lot of this dirt was imported to the landmass, right? So, I personally wanted to see the connection, right? And I'm gonna tell you, like, me and him had not really discussed how he was going to discuss his presentation on ancient Kemet. All he told me was, I'm gonna do something on the mounds in Africa. And so I was, like I said, I didn't know what that meant. So as he's going through this literature now, a lot of this I'm finding out as well. And I was trying to figure out how he was going to connect it. And I see his connection. Hopefully, brother can come back on. I'm hoping he can get back to finish his presentation, because I think it's very important for us to, like, really make this connection with the rest of the world, because as we as melanated people are starting to learn more about the culture in America, and we're starting to see our connection of melanin to this land in America, and we're starting to see a lot of the ingenuity of the first Americans. We're beginning to see things in a different light. And I want to talk to him about the connection, because there's got to be a connection between Africa and the mounds and America and the mounds. And what's not to say that there's mounds pretty much been made all around the world. You understand? What we're only been talking about America. We only talk about America having mounds, right? But what about China? What about India? What about perhaps even in Europe, even though, things is messed up, but, y'all hold on real quick. Yes, brother.
How long have I been cut off?
I don't know. It's been about a couple minutes.
Man, you should have hit me up the minute I wasn't. I'm trying to get back in now.
I thought when you went off that you would have seen that you got cut off. So, okay.
I'm hoping this thing out there. I'm trying to get it to load up now. Is it still open where I can just go back in when it loads up?
Yeah, we still going, man. I'm still building. So I'm waiting on y'all. He coming back. All right.
All right. Sorry about this. I'm trying to get on now.
All right. Yeah, I know my brother. He get back into the mix, trying to figure out how to use StreamYard and all that stuff. Sometimes he's having a little technical difficulty, but he should be back on. I really want him to finish that spiel that he's going on, because y'all, like, when y'all go back and look at this, like, he's breaking down how it goes from Kemet, and then he's even going into West Africa, showing how Yoruba and how they use mounds. So, I mean, really, like I said, I really hadn't thought about African mounds. Even though I am, a lot of times African minded. But the programming is Mounds America. Like, that's all I really think about is mounds in America. But it just makes you think about what was really going on. Like, what was this connection? Because, like, the brother hadn't even got into the geometric, the sacred geometry aspect yet. But when you look at the sacred geometry, like, we know, even just with the pyramids, how they're aligned with certain stars. We know that even with pyramids, they could determine the fall and the spring solstices or equinox. They could do the equinox. They could tell the solstices. They were very in tune with how things moved on a planetary and a stellar aspect. And we're seeing that we see that in Kemet. We see, you know, they've shown us many times how the three pyramids of the Giza line up with the belt of Orion, for example, right? So they show us even that how the shaft in the pyramids align with certain constellations in Africa. But really this is due to the colonialism of America. When the European settlers came in here and colonialized, they destroyed the way of life. One thing that you will find in Kemet is they found that it had more value to them in Kemet. So like a lot of the things weren't totally destroyed. When people came into Kemet, they kind of were in awe with how Kemet was, so they preserved it. But in the Americas, they wanted the land. They didn't want any ties to the native people here. So in order to do that, they kind of just disregarded a lot of what was going on in America. So now that we're looking at America history, it's such distortion, but it's also degraded because they want to look down on the natives. So their history, their religion, the sciences, they don't want that. They don't really want to show you that. You see what I'm saying? So, I'm just going in on what I understand. Like I said, I hope brother be able to come back in and put some jewels in. I don't know if you guys are have any questions or any statements that you want to say, because I'm not sure when he's coming back in. I'm about to try to check to see if he can get back in. I think his thing crashed for real. I really want to say it crashed. That's what I want to say, which is sad. Let me see something real quick, y'all. Bear with me. All right. So let me see something. I wanted to show his books too, real quick. I'm gonna see if I can show his books, because he was saying that he's getting this out of one of his books. He wrote a book on this. Like I said, I'm in my raw. He's got several books, y'all. Y'all need to check out the books. I'm gonna pull up his books real quick. Pull his books up real quick and show you guys. And I'm in my raw been on the show before. Okay, let me show you this. Share this tab instead. Let me make sure he's not on here, y'all, before I do that. Okay. Okay, so I want to say it's in the book, The Ancestors Surround Us. I want to say it's in this book right here. The Ancestors Surround Us, African Philosophy and Methodology. So the brother's got a lot of books. Like he said, he got the Amen-Ra Illumination, Volume 1, Ancestors Around Us, The Roman Illusions, 1 and 2. Also Roman Illusion 3. Then he's got the Amen-Ra Illumination Volume 2, right? Those are his main books right there. So you guys can get that. Like I said, you can get these books on Amazon, and you can get them on Indigenous Moors.org as well, right? So there we go. He finally back in the building. Let me see if he's popping up. He's kind of popping up. My man's having difficulties, y'all. We having difficulties, but that's all right. That's all right. I'm thinking something's going on with his computer and his email. So what we gonna have to do, this is volume 1, right? And he did start, so y'all can go back and check some of what he was doing. We did get a little bit in. This is volume 1, so we're gonna have a volume 2. We're gonna have to double down on the volume 2, right? So you guys can get it. So like I said, just a preview again. We talked about Kemet, the term Kemet actually meaning mound. He showed us the word Kemet in the old kingdom, because like in modern day language, you look at the old kingdom version of words versus the new kingdom of Egypt or Kemet in words, and they may not have the same meaning. It's kind of like when you look at Old English. You look at Old English, you can't even understand what Old English means. Some of the words are the same, but the meanings have changed. So even with if you look at Kemet, if you go back to the ancient times, the words don't have the same meaning, right? So it's just interesting that word in its older form meant mound, but as it got later on, it's looked at as, we think Kemet mean black land. We think Kemet mean, they consider black land to be black people, and that's not what it means. You know what I mean? So, I think he's back, y'all. I'm gonna let him get back in here, see what happens. We'll see if he can get back. Oh snap, he's back, y'all. He done took it. Are you there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh snap! I think my man is done for the night, y'all. I'm gonna get up off of here real quick, but before we do that, I'm gonna hit us with an ad. I want y'all to check this ad out. You know what I mean? Let's go.
Power in the melanin, she glows. Unified like Malcolm when we close. Pushing through the struggle, yeah, we chose. Solid as a rock, I love it grows. Speaking wisdom just like Dr. Umar knows. Dripping culture in our stance, it shows. On the front lines where that passion roars. Building empires, Kevin Samuels goals. Sitting at the table, he proposed. Melanated love, in America it flows.
Yo, so please check out our books on Amazon, and please go to indigenousmoors.org, one-stop shop for your needs. So with that being said, we're going to jump up out of here tonight. Sorry, y'all, we couldn't finish the program. We're going to jump back in with more of the program at a later date when we got everything together. We're going to have volume 2, but y'all got enough to chew on right now. So check out the video. Like I said, please like this video, and we are out. So peace and love. Tutanana.